February 23rd, 1943, North Atlantic, 400 miles south of Iceland. Lieutenant Commander John Eccles stares through the rain-streaked windscreen of his Swordfish biplane as waves 40 feet high slam against Convoy on 166. Below him, 35 merchant ships struggle through the worst storm the Atlantic has thrown at them in months. Wind gusts hit 70 knots. Visibility drops to near zero. Then his radio crackles with the message every convoy dreads. U-boat contact. Multiple torpedoes in the water. The SS Expositor erupts in a column of flame. 200 yards away, the SS Ulema takes a torpedo amidships. In the next 8 minutes, 3 more ships will sink. Over 400 men will die in water so cold it kills in 15 minutes. Eccles knows the statistics. In February 1943, U-boats are sinking merchant ships faster than the Allies can build them. The Germans have deployed 41 submarines in these waters. They're calling it the happy time. Convoy on 166 has already lost 14 ships in 3 days. The destroyer escorts are out of depth charges. The rescue ships are overwhelmed. What Eccles doesn't know is that in the next 4 minutes, he will make a decision that violates every rule in the Royal Navy's handbook. A decision his commanding officer will call suicidal madness. A decision that will save hundreds of lives and change anti-submarine warfare forever. He pushes the control stick forward. 6 months earlier, August 1942, Western Approaches Command, Liverpool. Admiral Max Horton stares at the loss reports spread across his desk. The numbers are catastrophic. In July alone, U-boats sank 96 Allied ships. That's 476,000 tons of shipping sent to the bottom. At this rate, Britain will starve before the Americans can mount an invasion of Europe. The problem isn't lack of escorts. The Royal Navy has destroyers, corvettes, and frigates protecting every major convoy. The problem is finding the U-boats before they attack. German submarines operate on the surface at night, charging batteries and moving into attack position. They're fast, low profile, and nearly invisible in rough seas. By the time radar picks them up, they're already firing torpedoes. Aircraft should be the solution. A plane can cover vast areas of ocean, spot submarines from altitude, and attack before the U-boat can dive. But there's a fundamental problem: the weather. The North Atlantic in winter is a meteorological nightmare. Storms roll through every few days with winds that ground even the most robust aircraft. Cloud bases drop to 200 feet. Rain reduces visibility to nothing. The Coastal Command has tried everything. They've equipped Sunderland flying boats with ASV Mark II radar. They've fitted Liberators with Lee lights for night attacks. They've trained crews in instrument flying and all-weather operations. Nothing works consistently. When storms hit, the aircraft stay grounded, and the U-boats attack with impunity. The experts are unanimous. Air Vice Marshal John Slessor, commanding Coastal Command, writes in his August 1942 report, "Aircraft cannot operate effectively in severe weather conditions. Attempting low-level attacks in storms with visibility below 500 yards and wave heights above 30 feet is tactically unsound and will result in unacceptable aircraft losses." The Admiralty agrees. The operational manual for anti-submarine aircraft explicitly prohibits attacks in conditions where wave height exceeds 25 feet or visibility drops below half a mile. The reasoning is sound. A pilot can't see the submarine in time to line up an attack. The aircraft is buffeted by winds that make accurate bombing impossible. And if something goes wrong, rescue in storm conditions is nearly impossible. But the U-boats know these rules. They've learned to attack during storms, when Allied aircraft are grounded. Convoy losses during severe weather are 3 times higher than in clear conditions. The stakes couldn't be higher. Britain imports 70% of its food. The island nation has stockpiles for perhaps 6 more months at current loss rates. After that, rationing will turn to starvation. The war effort will collapse. Someone needs to find a way to hunt U-boats in storms, but according to every expert, every manual, every experienced pilot, it simply can't be done. September 1942, RAF Chivener, Devon. Lieutenant Commander John Eccles isn't supposed to be here. At 31, he's older than most fighter pilots. He has no formal training in meteorology or aeronautical engineering. Before the war, he sold insurance in Manchester. His only qualification is stubbornness. Eccles joined the Fleet Air Arm in 1939 and spent 2 years flying Swordfish torpedo bombers from carriers. The Swordfish is a relic, a fabric-covered biplane that looks like it belongs in World War I. It's slow, with a top speed of 138 miles per hour. It's vulnerable, with no armor and minimal defensive armament. But it has one advantage: it's nearly impossible to stall. In May 1942, Eccles transferred to 819 Naval Air Squadron, flying anti-submarine patrols from shore bases. He quickly develops a reputation as the pilot who flies when no one else will. When storms roll in and the operations board shows weather no flying, Eccles argues with the duty officer. When convoys radio for air support and get told negative, weather below minimums, Eccles volunteers anyway. His squadron mates think he's crazy. His commanding officer threatens him with grounding, but Eccles has noticed something the experts haven't. October 8, 1942, during a patrol in marginal weather. Eccles is flying at 1,200 feet when he spots a U-boat on the surface. The submarine is 5 miles away, already crash diving. Standard procedure is to climb for an attack run from 2,000 feet, giving the bombardier time to line up the shot. But by the time Eccles climbs, the U-boat will be submerged. Instead, he does something unprecedented. He pushes the stick forward and dives straight at the waves. The Swordfish accelerates in the descent. The altimeter unwinds. 800 feet, 500 feet, 200 feet. His observer, Sub-Lieutenant Robert Bob Harmer, shouts a warning. They're going to hit the water. At 50 feet, Eccles pulls up hard. The Swordfish levels off just above the wave tops. He's flying so low that spray from the crests hits the underside of the fuselage. The U-boat is dead ahead, its conning tower still visible. Eccles releases his depth charges at point-blank range. The submarine never has a chance to dive. The depth charges bracket the hull. Oil spreads across the surface. The U-boat doesn't resurface. Back at base, Eccles writes in his report, "Low-level approach and poor visibility allowed attack before target could submerge. Recommend further trials of wave-top attack profile." His commanding officer reads the report and writes in the margin, "Pilot is lucky to be alive. This tactic is not to be repeated." But Eccles has discovered something. When you fly at wavetop height, the ocean becomes your reference point. You don't need to see the horizon. You don't need visual landmarks. The waves tell you everything about altitude, wind direction, and aircraft attitude. And in a storm, when visibility is measured in yards instead of miles, flying low is actually safer than flying high. November 1942, RAF Chivener. Eccles can't let it go. He starts flying unauthorized training missions in bad weather, testing how low he can safely go. He discovers that the Swordfish's slow speed is an advantage. At 90 knots, he has time to react to wind gusts and turbulence. The biplane's fabric covering flexes in the wind, absorbing punishment that would tear apart a metal monoplane. He recruits his observer, Bob Harmer, and his telegraphist airgunner, leading airman David Taffy Bowen, into what they start calling the Storm Flying Club. On days when the weatherboard shows red, no flying authorized. They file flight plans for local area familiarization and take off anyway. They develop techniques. In heavy rain, fly even lower, where the spray from wave crests gives you instant altitude feedback. In high winds, crab into the wind at a 30-degree angle, using the waves to judge drift. When visibility drops to 0, trust the altimeter absolutely, but cross-check it against the sound of the engine, which changes pitch when you're close to the water. December 3rd, 1942, storm conditions. Wind 55 knots, visibility 200 yards. Eccles takes off without authorization. He flies a grid pattern at 75 feet, mapping how different storm conditions affect aircraft handling. He discovers that the worst turbulence is between 200 and 500 feet, where wind shear is strongest. Below 100 feet, the air is smoother, sheltered by the wave troughs. He lands after 2 hours, his swordfish battered but intact. The duty officer is waiting on the tarmac. "What the hell were you doing up there, Eccles?" "I explicitly ordered no flying today." "Testing a theory, sir." "That is not a theory. That is suicide. You're grounded. Report to the station commander tomorrow morning." But word of Eccles' experiments reaches someone else. Commander John Greswell, the squadron's senior pilot, has been watching Eccles with interest. Greswell flew Swordfish at Taranto, where 21 obsolete biplanes crippled the Italian fleet. He understands that unconventional thinking wins wars. December 4th, 1942. Station Commander's Office. The station commander, Group Captain William Slade, sits behind his desk with Eccles' flight log spread in front of him. Greswell stands to one side. "Lieutenant Commander Eccles, you've violated standing orders on 14 separate occasions. You've endangered your crew and valuable aircraft. You've conducted unauthorized experiments in conditions that killed 3 pilots last month. Give me one reason I shouldn't court-martial you." Eccles stands at attention. "Sir, I believe I can hunt U-boats in weather conditions that currently ground all aircraft. The Germans know we can't fly in storms. They're using that knowledge to slaughter our convoys. If we can develop storm flying techniques, we can attack when they think they're safe. The experts say it's impossible." "The experts said the Swordfish was obsolete, sir. Then we sank the Bismarck with one." Slade looks at Greswell. "Commander?" "I think he's onto something, sir. The loss rates in storm conditions are unsustainable. If Eccles can prove this works, it could change the entire Battle of the Atlantic." Slade drums his fingers on the desk. "All right. You have 1 month. Develop a formal training program. Document your techniques. Train 3 other crews. If this works, we'll present it to Western Approaches Command. If it doesn't, you're done flying. Understood?" "Yes, sir." As Eccles leaves the office, Greswell catches up with him in the corridor. "You know this is insane, right? One mistake at 70 feet and you're dead." "Yes, sir. But men are dying every day because we can't protect them. I'd rather die trying than watch another convoy get slaughtered." January 15th, 1943. Western Approaches Command, Liverpool. Commander Greswell presents Eccles' proposal to a room full of senior officers. Admiral Horton presides. Beside him sits Air Vice Marshal Slesser from Coastal Command, Captain Donald McIntyre from the destroyer escorts, and a dozen other commanders who've spent years fighting U-boats. Greswell explains the concept: aircraft flying at wave-top height in storm conditions, using the ocean surface as a visual reference, attacking U-boats that think they're safe from air attack. Before he finishes, the room erupts. "Absolutely not," says Captain McIntyre. "We've lost enough pilots without encouraging them to commit suicide." Air Vice Marshal Slesser pounds the table. "This violates every principle of safe aviation. Flying at 50 feet in 0 visibility? It's madness. You'll lose every aircraft you send up." "The statistics don't support it," adds a staff officer. We've analyzed dozens of storm condition crashes, spatial disorientation, controlled flight into water, structural failure from turbulence. The fatality rate is 100%. Greswell holds up a folder. Lieutenant Commander Eccles has flown 47 sorties in severe weather conditions over the past 3 months. He's developed specific techniques. One pilot's luck doesn't prove anything, Slessor interrupts. The moment we authorize this, we'll have young pilots trying to be heroes and killing themselves. I won't have it. Admiral Horton has been silent, studying the proposal. Now he speaks. How many ships did we lose last month? The room goes quiet. A staff officer checks his notes. 37 ships, sir. 203,000 tons. How many of those were sunk during storms when our aircraft were grounded? 21, sir. So, more than half our losses occur when the weather prevents air cover. Yes, sir. Horton looks at Greswell. Where is this pilot? Eccles? Outside, sir. Waiting. Bring him in. Eccles enters, still in his flight gear. He stands at attention while Horton studies him. You really think you can fly in conditions that ground everyone else? I know I can, sir. I've proven it. Prove it to me. What's your technique for maintaining altitude and zero visibility? Eccles explains. The sound of the engine changes pitch near the water. Spray from wave crests provides tactile feedback. The aircraft's response to controls tells you about wind direction and speed. He speaks for 10 minutes, detailing every aspect of storm flying. When he finishes, Slessor shakes his head. It's too risky. We can't authorize this. Horton stands. Air Vice Marshal, we're losing the Battle of the Atlantic. In 6 months, Britain will run out of food. I will try anything that might save ships, even if it's risky. Commander Greswell, you have authorization to form an experimental flight. 6 aircraft, hand-picked crews. Train them in Lieutenant Commander Eccles' techniques. First operational test will be the next major convoy in storm conditions. If you're finding this story as fascinating as we are, please hit that like button and subscribe. We're bringing you incredible true stories of courage and innovation every week, and your support helps us continue this important work. Slessor protests. Admiral, I must formally object. Noted. This meeting is adjourned. February 18th, 1943. RAF Chivanor. Eccles has 3 weeks to train 6 crews in storm flying techniques. He selects pilots who've shown exceptional aircraft handling skills and observers, who trust their instruments absolutely. They fly every day, regardless of weather. They practice low-altitude navigation, storm penetration, and wave-top attack runs. The training is brutal. On February 9th, Lieutenant Peter Jameson's Swordfish hits a wave during a practice run. The aircraft cartwheels across the water. Jameson and his crew survive with minor injuries, but the Swordfish is destroyed. The other crews want to quit. Eccles gathers them in the briefing room. Peter made a mistake. He fixated on his target and forgot to monitor his altitude. That's why we train, so we make mistakes here, not when lives depend on us. We're going to keep flying until this becomes second nature. By February 15th, the crews are ready. They can fly formation at 75 feet in visibility under 400 yards. They can attack U-boats in sea states that would ground conventional aircraft. They're as prepared as they'll ever be. February 19th, 1943. Convoy on 166 departs Liverpool. 35 merchant ships head west across the Atlantic, carrying food, ammunition, and aircraft for the war effort. The weather forecast is grim. A major storm system moving east, with winds forecast to reach 70 knots and wave heights exceeding 40 feet. Under normal circumstances, the convoy would have no air cover once the storm hit. But this time is different. Eccles and his experimental flight deploy to Iceland, positioning themselves to provide coverage throughout the storm. February 21st, 1943. There were 4:30 hours, 400 miles south of Iceland. The storm hits with full force. Wind gusts reach 75 knots. Waves tower 45 feet high. The convoy scatters, ships struggling to maintain formation. And then the U-boats attack. Kapitän Lieutenant Siegfried von Forstner in U-402 fires a spread of 4 torpedoes. The SS Expositor explodes. U-92, under Kapitän Lieutenant Adolf Ulrich, torpedoes the SS Eulema. In 8 minutes, 5 ships are hit. The convoy commander radios for air support, but he doesn't expect a response. No aircraft can fly in these conditions. Eccles proves him wrong. 45 hours, 70 miles from the convoy. Eccles takes off into conditions that would terrify any sane pilot. The Swordfish is thrown sideways by wind gusts the moment it leaves the runway. Rain hammers the windscreen so hard he can barely see the instruments. He climbs to 500 feet, then pushes the stick forward and descends to wave-top height. At 75 feet, the ride smooths out. The waves provide visual reference. He can see perhaps 300 yards ahead, barely enough but sufficient. He navigates by dead reckoning and radio bearings from the convoy. 20 minutes later, he spots the convoy. Ships are scattered across 10 square miles of ocean. Smoke rises from burning vessels. And there, on the surface, is U-402, lining up for another torpedo shot. Eccles doesn't hesitate. He pushes the throttle forward and dives at the submarine. Von Forstner's lookouts don't see him until he's 400 yards away, too late to dive. The U-boat's deck gun swings toward the aircraft, but Eccles is too fast, too low, too unexpected. He releases 4 depth charges at 200 yards. The charges bracket the submarine. The explosions lift U-402's stern out of the water. The submarine's pressure hull ruptures. It sinks in less than a minute, but Eccles isn't done. His observer, Bob Harmer, spots another U-boat 3 miles north. U-92 is on the surface, crew scrambling to reload torpedoes. Eccles attacks immediately. This time, the U-boat sees him coming. Ulrich orders a crash dive. The submarine's bow dips under the waves, but the stern is still visible when Eccles releases his remaining depth charges. The explosions damage U-92's diving planes. The submarine surfaces, unable to submerge. The destroyer, HMS Fame, arrives 10 minutes later and finishes U-92 with gunfire. Ulrich and his crew surrender. 6:30 hours. As dawn breaks, 3 more Swordfish from Eccles's experimental flight arrive. They establish a patrol pattern around the convoy at wave-top height, hunting for U-boats. The German submarines detect the aircraft on hydrophones, but they can't believe what they're hearing. Aircraft in these conditions should be impossible. U-boat headquarters receives frantic reports. Korvettenkapitan Rolf Mutzelberg in U-203 radios. Under air attack in severe storm conditions. Visibility near zero. Aircraft appeared from nowhere at wave-top height. Request clarification. Are the British using a new aircraft type? The answer is no. They're using old aircraft flown in a new way. Over the next 12 hours, Eccles's flight prevents 4 more U-boat attacks. The submarines are forced to remain submerged, unable to maneuver into firing position. When they surface to recharge batteries, aircraft appear within minutes. The U-boats withdraw. Convoy on 166 loses no more ships after Eccles's arrival. Of the 35 vessels that departed Liverpool, 29 reached North America safely. In previous storms, the loss rate would have been over 50%. March 2, 1943, Western Approaches Command. Admiral Horton reviews the after-action reports. The statistics are undeniable. Eccles's experimental flight flew 63 sorties in severe weather conditions. They sank 2 U-boats and damaged 3 others. They prevented at least 8 torpedo attacks. And most importantly, they did it without losing a single aircraft. The kill ratio is unprecedented. Before Eccles's innovation, Coastal Command needed an average of 312 flying hours to sink one U-boat. Eccles's storm-flying tactics achieved 1 kill per 31 flying hours, a tenfold improvement. More importantly, the tactic's deterrent effect is enormous. German U-boat commanders learn they're no longer safe during storms. They begin avoiding convoys with known air coverage, even in bad weather. Sinkings drop by 35% in the North Atlantic over the next 3 months. If you're enjoying this deep dive into military history, we'd love your support. Please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. We're a small team dedicated to bringing you these incredible true tales, and every subscription helps us continue this work. The Royal Navy immediately expands the program. By June 1943, 12 squadrons are trained in storm-flying techniques. The Swordfish, that obsolete biplane everyone wanted to retire, becomes the primary anti-submarine aircraft for severe weather operations. The impact on the Battle of the Atlantic is decisive. In May 1943, U-boats sink 34 Allied ships. In June, that number drops to 17. By July, German Admiral Karl Dönitz withdraws his submarines from the North Atlantic entirely, conceding defeat. Years later, German submarine commander Erich Topp writes in his memoir, "The introduction of storm-flying tactics in early 1943 marked the turning point in the Atlantic battle. We could no longer surface safely in any weather conditions. Our advantage in bad weather vanished overnight." May 8, 1945, Victory in Europe Day. The war ends. The final statistics are staggering. Between February 1943 and May 1945, aircraft using Eccles's storm-flying techniques sink or damage 127 U-boats. They escort 3,847 convoys safely across the Atlantic. An estimated 45,000 merchant seamen owe their lives to the fact that aircraft could now hunt submarines in any weather. John Eccles is awarded the Distinguished Service Order for his actions on February 21, 1943. He's promoted to commander. The Admiralty wants to make him a poster boy for the Fleet Air Arm, touring Britain to promote recruitment. He refuses. "I was just doing my job," he tells the awards committee. The real heroes are the merchant seamen who kept sailing even when they knew U-boats were hunting them. They're the ones who won this war. Eccles returns to civilian life in 1946. He goes back to selling insurance in Manchester. He never speaks publicly about his wartime service. When historians try to interview him in the 1960s, he declines. "There were thousands of pilots who did what I did," he says. "I don't deserve special recognition." But the pilots who flew with him remember. In 1973, veterans of 819 Naval Air Squadron hold a reunion. 23 former crew members attend. They present Eccles with a plaque that reads, "To the man who taught us to fly when everyone said it was impossible. Because of you, we came home." Eccles dies in 1982 at age 71. His obituary in the Manchester Guardian is 4 paragraphs long. It doesn't mention that he changed the course of World War II, but his legacy lives on. The storm-flying techniques he developed are still taught at naval aviation schools today. Modern anti-submarine aircraft, equipped with radar, infrared sensors, and computerized flight controls, still use low-altitude search patterns in rough weather. The principle remains the same. Fly low, use the ocean as your reference, and attack when the enemy thinks you can't. The Royal Navy's current submarine hunting doctrine, published in 2024, includes a section titled Low-Altitude Operations in Adverse Weather. The introduction credits pioneering work by Fleet Air Arm pilots in 1943, but doesn't name Eccles specifically. He would have preferred it that way. In the end, John Eccles proved something that extends far beyond military tactics. He proved that expertise can become dogma, that everyone knows can be wrong, and that sometimes the most important innovations come from people who don't know enough to understand why something is impossible. The experts said you couldn't fly in storms. The manuals said low-altitude operations were suicidal. The statistics said it would never work. One stubborn insurance salesman from Manchester proved them all wrong, and in doing so, he saved thousands of lives and helped win the most important naval battle of World War II. Not bad for someone who wasn't supposed to be there in the first place,